Hello, everyone. We're going to start Module 5 and finish up our last week of lecture material. We're going to talk a bit about the stages of internationalization and implications for intercultural communication. So as for the stages of internationalization, as a company grows from domestic to global, it goes through a few stages. You need to know about these stages to effectively manage intercultural communication at each of them as a global leader. So the first stage is the import-export stage, and I want you to think about this in this way. Suppose you were a domestic company, and then you realize that you can export your product. And this becomes a possibility when there's excess capacity, foreign demand for the product, or saturation of domestic markets. Intercultural communication here is not too complex. If your product doesn't require any modifications, for example, you're a Bolivian company who wants to export quinoa, then the need for adaptation and communication is pretty minimal. Formalities can be handled by special export firms or even a designated in-house person. Typically somebody from marketing, and translators can take care of the necessary translation needs for the materials, for the marketing, for the communication. And that's pretty much it. You don't really need, there's not much to worry about at this stage. It's kind of pretty straightforward. If your company continues to grow, then you can become a multinational corporation. And the multinational corporation can take on several forms. And the first one is a national subsidiaries. So you can have headquarters and local subsidiaries in different countries who report directly to top management headquarters. Who do you hire to run these subsidiaries? Well, you may, in terms of global leadership, there's a principle called ethnocentric staffing, which is when management at a local subsidiary is really from the country where the headquarters is located. Kind of, for example, if you're an American country with a subsidiary in Taiwan, you may hire American managers to run that subsidiary. Polycentric staffing would mean you would hire Taiwanese managers, and geocentric staffing would mean you'd hire anybody with the appropriate level of skills and expertise. The subsidiary structure facilitates communication with headquarters, but it may limit communication between and among the subsidiaries themselves. So this is kind of just an overview of thinking about this in terms of global leadership. And then another route for a multinational corporation is to have the international division. And you basically divide your company into a domestic and an international division. So this structure may be ineffective because it can lead to the duplication of efforts. It may waste resources, and it may create an us versus them mentality. Whether the multinational corporation is based on subsidiaries or the international division, it has a clear national identity based on where the company originated. And sometimes the company of origin becomes part of the brand. So, for example, the German automobile manufacturers have operations all across the globe, but it's important to them to be seen as a German company because that is associated with high quality and outstanding performance. So as you can see, intercultural communication becomes more complex and trickier at this stage. And not only should you make your international teams effective, but you should somehow preserve that national identity in your communication and marketing materials. So a clear national identity is what makes the multinational corporation different from the global firm. So at a global firm, everything is global. There's no division into domestic and international operations. Global firms have no national identity and may have multiple headquarters At this stage, intercultural communication really requires a lot of effort. To be successful, a global firm needs broad intercultural communication, training, a strong corporate culture, and a corporate language. How does culture influence organizational structure and leadership? Generally, an organization can be based on 3 cultural values. Most Western organizations are based on credentials. So there we can see that job qualifications and portable credentials such as degrees are important. The employee can enter and leave the firm at any time and frequently maybe on the lookout for a better opportunity. So that's why outside networks are valued in Western countries. We can also see that loyalty is to oneself. Training is minimal and fast. And if an employee leaves for a better opportunity, most of the time that would be understood and nobody would bear a grudge against that person, even if they left in the middle of an important project. In other countries, for example, in Japan, organizational structure is based on context. And so what that means is that group belonging is very crucial and employees identify with the firm. So loyalty is not to oneself, but to the company. And the system is based on reciprocity. So it's really important when hiring employees to find someone who fits in that way rather than just they have those specific skills, because training lasts a really long time. And employees typically stay for many, many years. Seniority, hierarchy, and titles really matter. The last type of value that kind of underlies organizational structure is this idea of family. And you can see this pattern predominantly in Arab cultures, South Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Families take care of their own before they hire outsiders. So loyalty is to the family, and the senior member is the major decision maker. So, and business is conducted at a personal rather than an institutional. So how is this helpful to know about the influence of culture on organizational structures? Well, the first thing to keep in mind is that if yours is an international firm, you'll have to deal with a variety of business structures around the world, regardless of which structure your global or your organization is. If your company expands internationally, communication will obviously need to change. Effort and resources will need to be invested in to keep communication effective. And finally, in addition to adapting communication to the growing internal diversity, international firms need to adapt to the varying communication processes of other firms around the world. Basically, you'll have to juggle 2 types of intercultural communication, both internal and external.